Dr. Johnson just watched it with you all.
Yes.
So if there are any questions you want to ask of me.
And I also want to first also thank Bennett for having this opportunity, for letting Africana Women's Studies and the Honors Program help pull this together. So I want to thank. The question that I have for you is a little bit to talk about how you are in the sciences. Yet you bring to us this sociological, anthropological, cultural piece that you breathed. How did you make that happen?
Well, I started with the very statement that I said, I gotta take this story back, right? And I have to take it back and tell the story in a way that resonates specifically with Black women. And so we started this process. So I started this process a week after I wrote a reflection that was published in Sojourners. It was a lot in that moment, so much. And maybe part of this was a way of me healing too, because that moment was traumatic. It was hard. And I'm all the way across the water. I can only imagine what it's like for folks. But I asked the question, why was I in that space? Right? My research, I'm an epidemiologist by training. My research had taken me to Brazil. It had taken me to that space. But what happened in that space was beyond that. And I had to find a way to tell that story, right? And so I dug deep into what I learned here at Bennett is that, you know, you can have your own discipline, you can have all of those things, but it's also about what is your purpose, right? And I took classes, even when I was a biology major. Yes, I took classes, even when I was a biology major, I took classes in sociology, I took classes in other places, and the way I do public health is from this very informed place. So it's not just about the science, it's about science in context. She said our people are dying. That's a statistic. We could show those in numbers. But what that means is there are structures, there's policies, there's a society that makes it so that our people die at these exponentially larger rates than other folks. And it's not by accident. So even the way I put this together, I frame the work that I do as a researcher, as a scientist, in that context, because it's necessary, right? But I also knew that I am a scientist, I'm a social epidemiologist. I happened to be in that space, and I knew that there was some more context that I needed to put around this story. So as you notice, there were 3 Black women who helped me to tell the story. So this wasn't about me. I said, this has to be a collective of Black women telling the story. So we have Dr. Kia Caldwell, who's a full professor at UNC, who's in anthropology. She's been doing work in Brazil for 20 years. We have Zakia Carr-Johnson. She's worked with the Obama administration, and she's been working with Black women in Brazil for 20 years. We've had a sociologist and anthropologist from Spelman who does work in Bahia on culture and other things. And so we had to wrap that story in the context, and we brought in those different disciplines to tell the story, to give the context, so that it's not just this isolated Black woman gets shot, but all that context that makes, that has happened. The social activism that has been happening for years there. The feminist activism that has been happening for years there. Marielle herself was a sociologist. She trained in sociology. So one of the things, the title, I, a Black Woman Resist, came from a pamphlet I took that night. Like I said, she trained in sociology. She did her thesis research on police brutality. And then she took her statistics to the street. Right? She didn't just keep them in the textbook. She didn't just talk about them, pontificate. She was like, I'm going to distill this. She had created a pamphlet that night. It said, on the front it says, I, a Black Woman Resist. You open the pamphlet, it says, racism is not an opinion. And then she provided the statistics that showed racism is, and she showed that every 23 minutes a young Black person in Brazil is killed. Every 23 minutes. Those statistics sound like the statistics here, right? Every 23 minutes, she talked about education. She talked about limited opportunity. She talked about the fact that she was the only Black woman on the city council. Those are hard, fast statistics. So she was taking her scholarship, mixing it with her activism to move power structures and to make changes. And so I got inspiration from here, from her, what she was actually doing. And so in this, what we tried to reflect was not only the emotion, right, but the deeply rooted scholarship. And I want you all to know that, like, activism, you know, we say that word very, like, you know, in passing, activism. That doesn't mean you have to leave your head at the door. It can be very, when you think about all of the things that impact our communities, and you look at the numbers, and you see the analysis, that should drive you to want to do something about it. And so you don't have to separate the two. They can be very much intertwined. And I think that's what we also tried to reflect in this film. The other piece that I'll say is that I am not a filmmaker, but I guess I became one over the summer. So Free Southern Media, I want to give a shout out to my co-producer. They started, so crazy story, funny, not crazy story. They started as a collective. The idea has been ruminating, but March 14th is when they signed on the dotted lines that they would become a collective. I'm gonna let that sink in. March 14th is when they came together to say that they are going to be a collective. And my brother, William, has been working with them, and my sister, Rebecca, who's here, has been working with them on another documentary. They've done work documenting SNCC, but they're also doing work documenting the young folks in North Carolina who are doing work. My brother in climate justice, now my sister, who's been an activist, and she probably has more fire than I do. But he's been documenting that experience with the Poor People's Campaign, the Moral Mondays, and some of the other folks here. And my brother told him the story. He was like, we gotta help you tell this story. And the way they do filmmaking is that they do it's a participatory filmmaking. So they're like, well, if we tell this story, you gotta become a co-director. I was like, I have to do what? I'm a social epidemiologist. I don't know anything about filmmaking. You're going to learn this summer, and I did. And so I am grateful. And so I was co-directing with Amber Delgado, stand up, who is she's now working at Duke Center for Documentary Studies. Her father's from Peru, her mom's from Alabama. And I didn't have an Ava DuVernay, but I had an Emma. And she joined with me, and we started filming July 13th, 2018. She took a trip to Philadelphia. We went up to New York. They were having a tribute to Marielle in New York. We went up to New York, and we started filming. And when I saw some of the footage and the pictures she took, I was like, it's done. We're already done. And we were not done at all. But I knew that this story was going to be told. And people have been added to the project. The other thing is, it's been Black women and some righteous brothers helping us tell the story. So Amber, Erica over here, who did the editing for the documentary, in record time. In record time, I had to draw Bennett, so we got Azure coming in about a month away. But I was very intentional about involving young Black women. My sister's going to write on it. She's already got that assignment, but was very intentional in bringing young Black women in to tell the story. And also they did it, I had no money to give them, but they did it because they said this story needs to be told, right? And so, that was a long answer to your question. That has been the process. And it was again, we wanted the full arc, if you notice, was Marielle's life, Marielle's death, Marielle's resurrection. Through the Black women who, the ones that you saw at the end, they were actually running for office. And a lot of them ran for office because of what happened in March. They said, y'all thought you killed her? There is an army, literally an army of us. And you can't get rid of all of us. And so we didn't want to stop at her death. We wanted to show the continued struggle and literally the Black women who have said, we are taking her place, we are picking up the mantle, and we are carrying that mantle forward. And so we wanted to show that full arc. So the next leg of this journey, this story, is you all, and how we are in this space tonight, telling this story, and carrying her story and making sure that story gets told here in the United States. And we hope, and so you'll see cameras around if you want to say things to them, to stand in solidarity, please do so. Because like I said, Bennett College, this Black women's sacred space, we had to do this first story here because of that, right? So that was a lot. But how much time? Because I know you have another thing to get to. Okay.
elected officials, which is an important component and piece of this. And in sitting here thinking about what happened with Marianne Franco, that people's lives are on the line, that we kind of think, oh, you just go down to Raleigh or you go up to Washington, D.C., and you sit in the halls of Congress, or that there is no dangerous component to it. But there is when you're speaking, as we've been saying over and over, truth to power and being courageous about what you're saying, despite whoever is behind you. You don't even worry who's behind you, because you need to say what you need to at that particular moment. And so we're gonna hear from
reflection. So yeah, we'll start with, let's see, we want to start with the students. We'll start with the students. There are a couple that we just asked to be here and be present. You don't have to come up, you can stay where you are, but there are a couple of folks that we wanted to just respond. And anybody else who wants to respond to what they saw, what they felt, what they heard, everything that we try to put together here, please do so. But we'll ask Arabia and Constance to do so at this time.
Hello everyone, my name is Constance Staley. I'm a senior chemistry major here at Bennett College, and I'm from Ramsey, North Carolina. So one thing that really, thank you, we took notes. One thing that really stood out to me was the statement, "I am because we are." I thought that was very, very powerful, but I did have a question that goes along with that. How can Black women in the U.S. build relationships with one another that are close-knit, and that are how we're able to build that trust with one another to the point where we can lift each other up, support each other, and build on the legacy, that Marielle actually has built. So.
No, I think it starts in places like here, which is why we have to be committed to keeping places like Bennett around, right? Some of my best friends started here. Some of the work that I did in activism as a student, marching to the polls with Dr. Adams, that started here at Bennett. And I felt like Bennett was this safe space for you to mature in a way, but also you learn to use your voice, and you did it in a collective way. So, being on SGA, being, involved on campus, really connecting with one another. I think you learned that early on here. And again, it's one of the things, I observed a lot that night. Again, she said, this isn't just about me, right? And that night even, here's how you do it. I'm sitting in the audience, I blend in. Because we would all blend in actually, in fact. And so I'm sitting there, minding my business, and two Black women who could also speak a little English, they found out I was from the US. They were like, you gotta go up and say something. I was like, no, I'm okay. This is you all space. I don't, wanna impose you. They were like, no. So you older Black women, like, no, you say something, right? So they invited me to speak, which is why I spoke. So Marielle didn't know that, but she probably thought I was just another Black woman. So at the end, I had spoke, I said a few things. At the end, she was closing out. She thanked everybody that was there, right? Whoever set up the food, who printed the flyers, who organized the thing. She acknowledged everyone in the room. And again, it was a round table, so it wasn't just her speaking, it was other Black women. So she gave platform to other Black women to amplify. That's what you do. As a leader, you don't just speak yourself. You give platform for other. So I hate it when people say I'm speaking on behalf of. No, you're either speaking with or you're amplifying. You're not speaking on behalf of anyone, because they know their story. And that's what she did. That was her practice. You support criminal soldiers, I am because we are. So she ends the night with a quote from Audre Lorde. And she says it for, I am not free, while any woman is a prisoner, even when her shackles are very different from my own. She says it in Portuguese, looks at me, says it in English. She didn't have to do that. She invited me into that space. I didn't know her when I walked into that room, but in that moment, she made me feel connected. How is this Black woman from the U.S.? But no, she's like, you are a Black woman, and you're in this space with her and us, and you are now a part of us. And just that gesture of saying that quote in English to me while I was there, to invite me into that space. That's how we operate. We lift each other, we welcome each other in. And I asked myself, I said, how would we have done the same thing if Marielle was here at an event? Would we have like tried to make sure she felt welcome in these spaces, right? And so that's one of the things I think we just have to honor everyone's light and what everyone brings to the table. All the petty competition stuff, I mean, everybody, it's enough work in this world to do for everybody to shine their lights, right? And it's gonna take everybody. It's a collective effort, it's not one person. And so I think that's what we do. We have to find those spaces where we can come together and think about how we do this, not as one individual, but as a collective.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. Hello, my name is Olivia Paxton. I'm a senior biology and Africana Women's Studies major from Columbia, South Carolina. And the quote that stuck out to me was when one of the women said that Black women having to fight to prove their racism is real. I think that's something in this political climate that we're still having to do, to constantly fight to prove our humanity and our autonomy and everything. And my question is, how can young Black women become global citizens and social activists, continue the legacy of Marielle Franco, even if they feel that they aren't activists?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think one of the things that I think is important for all of us to do is travel. Like I said, my first experience outside of the country was as a student. My plane was like, you getting on a plane to Brazil, and I was like, I'm doing what? My father was like, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. I have to go. And it was life-changing because it breaks down so many barriers. And you see people, like, we're in a global society. And to see, I remember in this group, there was this young Black woman there when I was 20 years old. And she was speaking Portuguese, I was speaking English, but we had this communication between us that I cannot even explain. We laughed and joked, speaking in our own, and it was mind-blowing. But it's those types of moments where you explore the world, that you see other people, and you understand that we're all connected. Yeah. These borders, those are man-made, though they're really man-made. What separates us is language. What if we were to so one of the things we also did was we interchanged language here. We wanted you to feel the experience of not understanding and then understand, right? Because what happens when you break down that language barrier? You're like, whoa, that's something I could have said, And so I think that's one of the things we have to do, is that we have to, so get your passport, travel, meet people, connect with folks, right? Not just as tourists, but really connect. All of the trips that I've gone on internationally, I've either stayed with people in their homes, or stayed, with folks to really connect and to see. Because these struggles are real. Slavery in Brazil started before us. It also ended in 1888, 3 years after us, right? They have the highest proportion of Blacks outside the continent of Africa. It's almost 50%. It's over 50%. We don't know that here. We talk about racism here. We centralize racism to a U.S. phenomenon, but it happens all over the world, and most especially in Brazil. So what if we were able to begin to have conversations transnationally about these shared issues? What would that look like? And I'm beginning to do that with some of the women that I met, in Brazil. We're beginning to have these conversations. How do we talk about these issues from not just a U.S.-centric perspective? So, for example, when Mike Brown, they call the names of Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin. Do we do the same? When folks there are killed and shot. We don't even know. Malio Mathis, you should remember his name. He was shot leaving church, right? That could have been any person here in the U.S. And so we've got, I think, here in the U.S., we have to let go of some of our arrogance too. And some of the centrality we have around it being, it's only here, it's only that for us, right? And so it's really important that we begin to have those dialogues and have those conversations and see, and expanding our worldview now so that we can see these as shared and common struggles. I'm gonna ask, I asked very specific people to be in the room tonight. Dr. Alma Adams, Dr. Gladys Robinson, because when I was a student, I saw y'all how you all operated. Dr. Adams also, so a couple things, I took her, she was an art major. Art, like PhD, her PhD is in art. And I took her art class. We also marched to the polls. Bennett bells are voted. She went around with her bullhorn. Bennett bells are voting bells. And she started off in the city local school board, right? And when I was in Brazil, she called to check on me. My dad had, put the alarm. This woman called, she said, "Are you okay?" And I wanted her to
come home.
Yeah, that too. But I was like, I gotta stay. I had to stay. But I want to acknowledge her, but also give her room. And Dr. Robinson, as a Bennett alum, saw you on campus. You are. I mean, we watched y'all. We might not have said much, but I watched you. I watched how you operated. And I know you come out of that legacy of Bennett where we were sitting in, y'all were sitting in and marching. And so I asked these two women very specifically to be here. So if you all have anything to say and to respond.
Well, I actually was going to mention the quote that Mariella ended her talk with that night. And let me just say, it's always great to be back on this campus. I spent 40 years here. Look good, right? Let me first of all acknowledge our president, and we've been doing some things together too. But I've got to tell you, Sherelle, how very proud I am of you. I taught this young lady, and it just warms my heart. I mean, because I knew she was going to do great things anyway. Bennett Bells do it well, and you don't have to be. She's in science, and I studied art most of my life as far as getting prepared to teach. But now I am working with people in a different sort of way. And people ask me in the Congress, do you miss teaching? Because I taught so long. And I said, well, I don't miss teaching. I miss my students. And many of my students are still texting and reaching out to me. And I said, well, I don't miss teaching, but I miss my students. But I have an opportunity to teach every day in the halls of Congress, because many of our members think they know what they don't know, and I try to help them to understand what they need to know. But this was so moving for me, and I'm glad that I was able to be here. I think when it was scheduled before, I think the hurricane came, something happened, and I wasn't able to be here. And this is not my district anymore, but it's still in my heart. Sometimes it's just about just how you feel. And I don't want to ask you if you voted yet. Yesterday early vote started, so I know every woman in this room is going to make sure that you get to the polls, because Bennett bells are voting bells. Let me just say that what I have seen and what I have heard helps me to really appreciate all of you and appreciate the fact that I am a black woman, and I am so very proud of that. I was raised by a strong black woman who was not formally educated, but she was smart enough to know that I needed an education. She did domestic work. You all don't know what that is. She cleaned other folks' houses. She scrubbed floors, so I wouldn't have to do that. And so I was able to come to North Carolina and be educated, and then be educated even further as I spent my years on this campus, teaching art, but also teaching many other things. Toward the end of my time here, I taught women in politics. Sherelle was in that class too, and we did a lot of things in the community. But I think one of the things that really struck me about this young woman, I didn't have a chance to know her. She was very young, 38 years old, but very, very committed to her community, understanding where she came from, not leaving that behind, but bringing others along. And I always like to say, as you climb, the old spiritual Jacob's ladder, but Jennifer's ladder. With every round going higher and higher, you want to bring other Jennifers along. The fact that she was so committed, it reminded me of the comment that Frederick Douglass made about, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. And truly, she struggled, but she understood the needs of her community. And that's really, listen, when you hear all the things about the sit-ins in 1960, Bennett Bells was sitting in well before that. And I think Dr. Johnson mentioned that in the 30s, and we reenacted that march. When I was here, we 500-600 students left this campus. We marched downtown to the Carolina Theater, where it all began back in 1937. So you have a tremendous history and a legacy to build on, and you need to continue to do that. You should be very proud of who you are, that you are a Black woman and you are in this space at this time, because you're here for such a time as this. Somebody said, asked about your purpose, and I was thinking, although I was not here when Dr. David Dallas Jones was the president, but I know all of the history. I went to 40 Founders Days and 40 everything. Faculty had to go when the students didn't go. I never understood that. Y'all need to change that. but so he would walk the campus, stop a student at random. Young lady, what is your purpose? You know, Mariella understood what her purpose was. And that is so important, because when you do that, it doesn't matter really what you major in. You're going to get out and you're going to do what you need to do. I majored in art, but you know, I'm majoring in people now. I've gone from the school board here. I started my career, and one of the things I got to say about Bennett, I am the HBCU godmother in the Congress. I started the first bipartisan HBCU caucus, and we're going to be doing great things for our schools. Not just to survive, but to thrive. That's what we need. Bennett needs to be here forever and ever. And so, you know, I'm just happy to know that a part of my history is right here on this campus, and that I've had such great women to come into my classrooms, and that I've had the privilege of mentoring like Sherelle. Of course, she comes from really good stock. Now, I know my daddy. Dr. Barber, and he called me too, you know, and he was really worried, and we were back and forth, but Sherelle understood her purpose, and she said to me, I said, well, you know, we can get you home now. And she said, you know, I really think I need to stay. She said, I really need to stay. So she understood. I'm glad all of that worked out, and I'm glad that you are doing this work. It is so important that we tell our story, that we continue to speak truth to power. That's what it's about. And you know, I started, 35 years ago on the school board here in Greensboro, first African American woman elected to the school board. And I was able to continue my service in local government here, school board, city council, 20 years in North Carolina House, because of the support that I got on this campus. The campus, the presidents, all of them that I served, 5, understood how important it was to do that work in the community and fulfill the purpose, not only that you had internally, but the purpose that the institution had for you. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Thank you all. One thing I wanted to say that we did, when Sherelle called me and asked me about getting a letter to send to the ambassador there, to not only call for an investigation of this young woman's death, but you know, for all of Brazil to embrace human rights and civil rights. And so my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus and some of my other colleagues and I prepared a letter to protest that killing, that murder, and to also speak truth to power. I brought a copy with me. I pulled it up since I was going to be here, but I think sometimes it's not all legislation that you do in the Congress, but you have to make statements and put positions out there so that your colleagues can understand a little bit more thoroughly about things. So we'll send it to you. So if you want to pass it around and have other students see it. But again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr.
So I
Bennett, because I too remember her dad saying, Sherelle's going to Bennett. And Sherelle had a lot of other opportunities. She had a lot of other opportunities, but she chose Bennett. And she chose the right place, didn't she? She chose the right place. And so that's important, but just to reflect a little on the film, and when I reflect on my days at Bennett. I reflect first that I came out of a very poor family in Georgia. I had choices too, like Emory and Southern Cal, but I chose Bennett. And that was the right place. That was the right place. And what Bennett taught was important because I had a professor in psychology, Dr. Grandison, who said, young ladies, you can't learn what you need to know in this classroom. You gotta learn it in the community. And so we were required to be involved in the community. And that involvement, probably I went a little farther than he intended, because a group of us we hooked up with the old Greensboro Association of Poor People on Garland Street, and Lewis Brandon, and then along came Nelson Johnson, and some of the others. And our coalition of people became Bennett Bell and a few A&T, but the rest of the community. And that's how we got involved in protesting for the rights of other people, because we were involved. And I tell you that because when you talk about women, I was president of junior class and one of those rowdy persons you talk about. Some of you are like that now. So it's all right. It's all right. It serves you well later on. But I heard her ask about sisterhood. We formed that bond. Then Andrea Harris, Carla Friend, there was a bunch of us who were always out in the community being involved. And when the Scott Hall shooting occurred at A&T, we formed a barricade, Bennett women, across Bennett, and told the A&T students, come over here, they can't touch you. We absolutely did that. We're all women. We formed a barricade and we said, you come over here. We were bold. You know, we knew what our rights were and we stood up for our rights. And it happens that one of my Bennett sisters, you've heard of her, and that's what brought that back to me, is Sandy Smith. Sandy was behind me in class. She was a year or so behind me, but Sandy continued to work with, then they called it the Nazi Party and all that other stuff, but it was really about folks fighting for human rights. And then the KKK came to Greensboro, and Sandy got killed. So young ladies, don't think that it's outside of your community, it's inside. It's everywhere you go, there are battles to be fought. And it's a matter of how you put in place what you've learned, what coalitions you've built, because we need each other, in terms of how you move forward with that, and the experiences, like Sherelle has moved forward. You'll use these experiences to do other things. They may not be in your field, but you will use these experiences to help develop some other young ladies, or to teach, like a young lady told me I met in the car repair shop. She was a Bennett Bell who has her master's, and she said, I love it. And I learned education at Bennett. We are some of the best teachers, you know, and that made me really proud. So that's what Bennett does. In the General Assembly, I've been fighting for 8 years. Alma left, and she left me down there fighting. Just fight for dear life, you know, and all. And hopefully next year, all of y'all get out and vote. We're gonna turn it around. But it's always about a battle for your rights and for others' rights. That's what Mariella said. I'm not fighting for me. We're fighting for everybody else who's attacked, who people don't want to succeed in life, don't want folk to have a chance to be educated. They don't want you to have a chance to be educated. Don't fool yourself. that really don't want you to be educated. You know, they don't want other folk to be able to get jobs. You know, they feel it's only for a few at the top. So our struggles don't stop, they continue. They continue. And for you, they're continuing. It looks like a rebirth of the 60s or the 50s maybe. Because they're going back to segregation, I think. It is terrible. It is awful. So you've got a lot of struggles. So don't be fooled by what you think you see, because it's really not there. Not there. You've got to struggle for, you know, I'm reading a book called, how many of you read the book, Brown is the New White? Pull the book. Brown is the new white. Brown is the new majority of the United States. Don't you know that? Okay, but it talks about how United States took Mexico. And now we want to keep people out. Okay? So read that book and understand how folk continue to divide us rather than allow us to work together. So you can go to other countries and meet people and work together. And Bennett is a wonderful place. The sisterhood you learn here, even the few folks you don't like, when you come back 50 years later, you love everybody. Oh girl, you were down the hall for me. I didn't like you then. You know. But it's a sisterhood, and that bond takes you. I was in, where was I? Canada somewhere, and someone said, what is that? A Bennett Bell. Wherever you go, you will find one. You find that sisterhood, and they take care of you too. So I'll stop right there, but I want to congratulate you again and all of the other young women who helped to produce this. A few young men too. But this is absolutely wonderful, and to encourage you to continue.
But I want to ask if there are any other questions, additional questions, comments, reactions to this. Want to bring it back to this idea that, you know, they've said something in so many ways, but Marielle said something like, we have to occupy every space with our bodies. We have to occupy every space with our bodies, and that's what we have to occupy every space. It is our time. It's our time. And in that room that night, I felt Fanny and Sojourner and Harriet and all the Brazilian black women that I didn't even know that I felt, but that spirit was in that space. And so I would say that it is our time. Marielle is in this space tonight. She's here. She's present. And she's going to continue to be here because we're here. We now know her story. And we're going to take that story with us where we go. Dr. Brooklyn wants to say a few things, but I do want to hear from students if they have things.
I just want to thank you so much for the film. One of the things that we do here at Bennett is we try to make sure that our students graduate as global citizens, and it is so important to tell our own stories. Alma, I want to tell you that I now teach women in politics, and the book that I use is Women in Politics, A Global Perspective. I wish my students were here today because the section we did today was on marginalized people, and we talked about intersectionality. So I wish they had been here to really hear the way you're putting this story together, because having films like this help us tell the story and let our students see that their issues are global issues and that there is a connectedness between black women all over the world. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yes. Yes, Doctor. Of course, Dr. Dawkins. President Dawkins.
I just want to say how important it is for us to travel. How many of you have passports? Good. Great. And it doesn't make sense for you to graduate and not get a free passport. I also want to say I've been to Brazil several times. I've been to Rio, I've been to Bahia, Vizela, and so forth. And that's a rich country. Has a lot of issues around education, It's hard to imagine that many of the citizens, particularly Afro-Brazilians, did not start going to college. First time showing up in the college was in 2003. And so that's hard to believe that when you go to Brazil, you feel like you're back 20 years or more, okay? And so it's very important. It's nice to see Arabia and Janaya and others who have traveled abroad with me, not only to places like Cape Town and Johannesburg and Seoul and other places, but it's very important for you to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have here to offer you. Thank you for
Thank
tonight.
So we're gonna wrap up. We can do some question and answer. A couple things I want to let you all know. The investigation of Marielle's assassination is ongoing, and you know what that means, which means they probably, you know. But so Amnesty Brazil has been continuing to lift her and continuing to ask for an independent investigation into her assassination. So I would encourage you to go to Amnesty Brazil. Also, Amnesty USA has some information. Democracy in Brazil is under attack. Brazil has their elections on the first Sunday in October, the last Sunday in October, and in this first wave of the election, what we did see was this huge amount of unprecedented number of black women running for public office, which was amazing. But what we also saw was a very, very right-wing, leftist, extreme, racist, xenophobic, every other thing, hateful, former military be at the top of the polls. And so their struggle is going to continue. And it's important for us to know, to follow, to understand, and find ways to stand in solidarity. There are black women who are her she has a family. She had a daughter, a sister, a mother, her partner. They're still there. They're still struggling. They're still asking questions. And they are also threatened, still threatened. And so one of the reasons, again, for doing this piece is also to say we've got to stand in solidarity. We've got to focus our eyes on some of the issues that are happening there and find ways to be in solidarity with our sisters and our brothers in other places, and especially in Brazil. So I want to tell you, so what we're going to be doing, if you follow our Twitter account, not only will we be talking about these screenings, but we will be pushing out news that's in English so you know what's going on, what's happening there. And we would encourage you to retweet, repost, making sure that, we start looking in other places where injustice is happening, where people are struggling and fighting for the resistance. But what makes me hopeful is those black women who have literally taken up the mantle in spite of and despite of the real danger that they face, have decided that we are going to stand. We are going to resist. And we are going to make sure that our voices, Marielle's voice, continues to be heard as we speak truth to power. So, with that said, the only other person I do want to call out is Reverend Ferguson, who was also a mentor. She wasn't on Bennett's campus, but she was a pastor here in Greensboro. I would go to her church, and her words, she's also Mary McLeod Bethune's great niece, is it? She's here, and I wanted to make sure she was here. All these powerful black women in this room, right? And so we wanted to make sure that happened. Any other questions? I know this has been a lot of information. There'll be some additional things. The last group of folks that there's some questions back here, yes.
Oh, we got a lot of questions.
Uh-oh. What are we doing on time? 7:41. Okay, we got it. We can take a couple questions, yes.
Question and comment on the question. The thing that struck me about the shirts that you were wearing and the question that Constance had about what do we do about the sisterhood, I think that we think of a black woman resisting in political terms and marching and politics, and that's very important. But the personal is also political. And so I think I teach in the journalism department. And so to resist some of the images of black women that present us as divided, to resist some of the tendencies or the push to be petty and to not be supportive of each other when you find yourself feeling that, to resist that and to embrace as opposed to to separate, to resist anything that keeps you feeling disempowered, so that you can then find your purpose and do the other things that you need to do. So resistance can be that marching, but resistance can also be an internal.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. Thank you so much for that comment. Any additional hands? We have some back here. Yes.
All right. Yes. My name is Amber McKinley. I'm a freshwoman biology major from Memphis, Tennessee.
My history there.
My comment is thank you for sharing this with us, because I was very unaware. I'm gonna put it out there, very unaware. So it's great to hear and see this coming, especially from Bennett, you know, with it being an all women's college. My second, was a question, how can I get a shirt?
That's been everyone's question. So I gotta give y'all have to let me give a shout out to my brother. He's one of the righteous brothers in my life. He helped me get these t-shirts. We got them for the crew, our team, and now everyone's asking, how can I get a shirt? The other thing, when I thought about doing t-shirts, I said we can't exploit this moment and make it for like profit or anything. That would be just dishonoring of her legacy. But what I am willing to think about is how if any profits from the shirts go back into the rest of the work with the film, or supporting an organization that's doing activism on the ground. So we're gonna think that through as a team, and it looks like we got some shirts to get out. Because it also, we wanna use this to tell Marielle's story. So the back of it is the quote from the film. And so we can use this to tell Marielle's story. We've just been very thoughtful about every piece of this. And wanting to, again, honor her legacy, honor that story. Even making sure that there were Black women's voices from Brazil, so that footage from Brazil. Because I was like, I can't, it would be arrogant of me to just try to tell a story from my perspective. And so we made sure that their voices somehow became a part of the film, right? And so we'll think about that and we'll get back to you, but it looks like we have a demand for t-shirts. Yes.
How is it going to be broadcast?
So right now we're doing very private controlled screenings because we want to control the conversation around the film. We want to be able to. So and we're also, there's still things that we're doing. So we're also seeing this as a living documentary, right? So we've done this part of it, of telling the story. But now all of this is also going to be part of the story. And so we're leading up to about March 14, 2019 as a goal to add some of this footage, to add some of, of us telling this story. We've been invited to Howard, to Spelman. We're going to do a screening at Duke tomorrow. Got one at UNC. So we're beginning to do these screenings this way. We thought about distributing it online, but we want to give the context. And we want to be able to control how it is done. And also the images, if you noticed, one of the woman who translated for me, same woman who was at the protest the next day, she's still in Brazil.
Yeah.
And she works at the consulate. So if we put we also have to be very thoughtful about how we put things out there, because she is in that space. We're here, we're safe, we're not dealing with a potentially military person coming into power. So that's the other thing, that we're very intentional about how we're distributing, so we're gonna do it in these private small screens. Yes.
Hi, my name is Princess Bush. I'm a sophomore biology major, psychology minor from Orlando, Florida. And to start with a comment, I just really thank God for the whole event and just you coming and choosing to come to Bennett first. I truly treat that as an honor. And I just, thinking on the time frame of your experience of going to Brazil and the one day that you could have chosen not to be there, or you could have chosen to leave early, you were able to be in that space at that time. And had you not had gone, you would have probably never had met her, you wouldn't have had this story. And so I just think about that and my mind's kind of like blown, because it's like one choice, or it's been leading up, because you even talked about how while you were here, you chose to go to Brazil. But just to see how that process went about and to bring you to this day, like, I know, as you had said, you were still going through the healing process of that experience and what happened, but also just how you recognize, like, the victory in her life, the victory in just that opportunity that could have not had occurred, but you were able to experience it. You were able to be in the same room as her, hear from her own mouth, her own words, and see it with your own eyes, and just how that experience in itself continues to motivate you to continue doing what you're doing. And also, well, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, and I hope, so what I hope is that as much as it has motivated me, that it motivates everybody who sees it. So that's one of the things. I could not keep this story to, it was so powerful, I could not keep the story to myself. And what I said in the months, I've done a lot of reflecting, a lot of journaling, is one, is that we have to bear witness. We have to bear witness both to the pain of everything that happened, but we also have to bear witness to the power in spite of. And this has been my way of wrestling life out of death. God puts you in places you never know why. And it's been both an honor and very humbling that he entrusted me with this. But there was no way, after the power of that night, that I could remain silent. And really, in some ways, Marielle, in so many ways, she's inspired me, she's reinvigorated me in a way that I could not even have imagined. And so when I say Marielle is here, Marielle presente, she really is. I wake up with her every single day. And so I just hope that you all are touched just as much as I was touched by her light and her strength and her courage and the light, strength, and courage of the other Black women who I met that night and who I am witnessing in living color continue her legacy of activism, of resistance, of standing, of speaking truth. And that's all, this is wanting to share that light, to share that power. Because one thing about energy, my brother's a physics major, it's never destroyed. It's only transfer. Last thing I'll say, the night after everything happened, around 11 o'clock that night, there was a thunderstorm in Rio. There was also a thunderstorm in Bahia. But I remember, because we had thunderstorms in Rio because it was the rainy season, but I remember this thunderstorm because this wind blew by my window that I was just like, what was that? And I remember, because we were in the Easter season leading up to Easter, and the way the wind blew by, I said, they messed with the wrong one. There was something very supernatural about Marielle and who she was and how her spirit has literally been unleashed. And I felt it that night in that thunderstorm. And literally there's some folks that did a video with that thunderstorm and, you know, with some really powerful imagery there, but she's here, she's present, and she's continuing to have her influence literally all over the world. And so I hope you all have felt just a little bit of what I felt that night, being with those Black women, being with that Black woman. And I'm just grateful for having had the opportunity to share with you. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Alexis French. I am a graduating senior political science major from Marlboro, Maryland. And I serve as the Student Government Association president here. My question to you is, what can we do as Bennett College and HBCU for women to assist you with this movement? And we would love to have you back here, by the way. What can we do to conversation going and to assist you with this?
Yeah, we'll have to do some brainstorming. That's a really long question. One of the first things I want us to do is take a group photo. Social media is powerful, right? So the reason we have footage of the night is because Marielle was Facebook Living the whole event, right? So one of the things, I think imagery is powerful. And the first thing we can do is take a group photo of and showing black women in Brazil, that black women here on Bennett College campus, we see you, we honor you, we honor your struggle, and we're standing with you in solidarity. That's a very simple thing, and we can talk about other ways. We will just talk about it, but that's one of the first steps. Following us on Twitter, retweeting some of the things that we post about, but we can sit down and have a larger conversation of what solidarity looks like and how we can continue. I know, like I said, Azure has been helping us a lot with getting things out. If there's students who want to get involved, we still have more editing to do. We have a ton of footage to still, kind of incorporate in this. So we can find ways for students to use your gifts. You just use your gifts to plug into this work and to amplify this story. And we'll be grateful to talk to you about how some tangible ways we can do that. Thank you so much. And I'm a former SGA president, so I know that pressure. Thank you so much for supporting.
And we still have time for a couple more comments or questions if folks have something that they really want to say or share in this space. I know I saw it.
Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Kenya Murray. I'm visiting here from New York City with my partner Leslie. So I am a fellow epidemiologist as well, and I think one of the things, I guess first I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience. That's very brave of you, and it's definitely been something that has restored me in this moment. And also thank you to the women of Bennett. I feel like I've been filled up by you all and the people who have come before you. I think as a researcher, so my specialization is in infectious disease epidemiology. And I'm always trying to interweave the social experiences of women of color in my work. A lot of that entails reaching across to other global spaces to elevate the experiences of other women, mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. And my question to you is probably a loaded question, but as you go through this experience, when you return to Drexel University, how will it shape your framing of your work as a social epidemiologist, interweaving the experiences of other women in other spaces?
No, I mean, it has totally shifted my work. So as an epidemiologist, we write articles, we write journal articles, we run p-values and tables or whatever. Kenneth and Free Southern Media has said, nope, I can't be in that box. I'm out of the box now. And so what I do hope to actually do is take the lessons I learned and incorporate this type of storytelling into the work that I do, the research. I think data and numbers and stories are so powerful. And so beginning to think about how to do that, how to tell stories along with the rigorous research. I don't think you have to have either or. You can have both and am committed to now figuring out ways to do that. Because the other thing is, they put us in a box. The academy, the ivory tower, tries to tell us this is what you do to be successful. And I followed the script a little bit, but then I was like, no, that's not changing anything. Marielle took the statistics to the street. She was a sociologist by training, but she took that to the street. She took that to the legislative house. She took that to the state house. She took that to the local city council, and she was using that research to really do an amplify voice and give voice and push policies that would impact the community that she came from. So that's one of the ways that I'm envisioning that this has really shaped, like just getting out of the box that they try to put us in as academics. Yes.
What are some of the different organizations, if any, that you guys have, collaborated with or have tried to reach out to in the U.S. that surrounds the same purpose that you guys do?
The issue. So for every screening that we're doing, we're trying to, again, this is a partnership with Africana Women's Studies and the honors program. When we screen at UNC, for example, it'll be with a woman who's in the Africana and Diaspora Studies program. In Philly, we are partnering with a museum called the Colored Girls Museum, and she's very attached. So really just choosing our partners as we're screening this very wisely, inviting people to come, because we did this with Black women in mind. Like, nothing against the brothers, but we did this with Black women in mind. And so as we're doing the different screenings, we are very intentionally, at Harvard, there's a group called the Women of Color Collective. And when so I'm gonna go to Harvard in the spring and partner with them on this project, right? So being very intentional about that, doing that as we're moving around and doing these screenings across. Now, I guess across the country, we're doing screenings across the country now, huh? So yeah.
And so if you all have ideas, I would think that you saw yourselves reflected in this story, then that would be, come to us.
Yeah.
Talk about it. If you have an idea, don't just sit on it and be quiet about it. I mean, this is what we mean by amplifying your voices, getting connections. So what you were really demonstrating is how to build relationship, how to build connection, and we can do it globally and not just within our own little small.
Yeah, and we've got on those cards that we have an email address, madielliresist@gmail.com. If you do have suggestions, if you want to reach out to us, if you want to host another screening back here in Brazil, in here, we can think about doing that. So I know y'all gonna do something, but I do have to do this one thing. So again, my brother William is one of the righteous brothers in my life, along with my father, who y'all know my father, but my sister Rebecca is also one of the righteous young women. But today is a special day. It's October 18th, 2018, and October 18th means it is my brother William's birthday. Birthday, it's gotta be Stevie Wonder. So y'all gonna do this. He didn't know I was gonna do this. We gotta do the Stevie Wonder version. I do wanna do this. I wanna just, if y'all want one chorus. One, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. One of the reasons he's really walked with me in this journey. When I told him I had to tell the story, he connected me with Kenneth. So I really just honor him for all the ways in which he's been a brother in this process. So thank you all for letting me do that.
So the rest of the program will get ready to start in like 1 minute. I know you all have something to do real quick, and then we'll have the other piece of what we should happen.
Y'all, I'm gonna get y'all. Everybody come, Erica, Azure, Kenneth, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we just had another courageous Black woman walk in the room. I think there is going to be, thank you so much for allowing us to have you, please. Anita Earls is running for Supreme Court. Please stay and support that work, because again, we need to occupy every space. We do want to do it, but let's have her. Okay. Don't leave. We do want to take a group photo to make sure that we capture this moment. So, yes.
Freddie, you staying here? What time did you want to meet tonight?
I didn't call for the meeting, so I didn't know what we were doing.
Okay.